Hi, my name is Matt Williams with Camera Ambassador, and this week I am bringing you tips, tutorials, how-tos, and tests on the Red Epic. I have had a blast learning more than I thought that I could have known about this camera, and to be honest, there's a lot in here. And again, to be honest, for $55,000 for a camera, there should be a lot in here. It has lived up to pretty much all of my expectations and done everything better than I could have asked for. There are some things that I would go to another camera for. For instance, I prefer the color of the Canon C500, but the image quality overall of the Red Epic Dragon is, to me, quite superb. Now, this camera does many things very well, but this is not a small, compact camera, despite the size that we see here right now. This camera is not meant to be like this. If you think it's meant to be like this, all you have to do is look at the little mic inputs and you'll notice that they're eighth. We don't want eighth. We don't really care for quarter too much. We want XLR. We're filmmakers and that's what production does, is XLR. But we don't have that on here. Thankfully, Red has gone ahead and had a little bit of future sight on this, and they've created something called an I/O module, which will allow you to be able to have XLR inputs onto this camera. The other thing that was an issue for me too was I can't believe that I can spend $3,500, $3,000 on a C100 and I'm able to have internal ND, but I don't get that standard with my Red Dragon. Again, Red had some future sight onto this, and they decided to make a lens mount that has variable ND on it. This is a PL Motion mount that has internal ND. You can dial in exactly what you're looking for. The next thing I want to talk to you about is the menu system on this camera. Now, the menu system here, it's not like any other menu system. It is so intuitive. You can get zipping around on that menu system very quickly, especially if you know what you're looking for. Now, this camera is kind of an all-inclusive camera. You kind of get to do a lot of different things because of how good this Dragon sensor is. This isn't just a sensor that you could use solely for something like drama, or it's not just a camera that's built up for, it's a documentary style film camera. This is a full-fledged, whole 9 yards production camera, and you can get whatever look that you want to out of this camera. But you have to know the look you're going for, just like any other cinema that you create. If I'm making a sci-fi, I'm gonna light it one way. If I'm making a comedy, it's gonna be completely different. That's always gonna be the case, but a lot of cameras don't have the ability to make an image that looks and feels like it's a comedy, or looks and feels like it's a sci-fi. For instance, the Panasonic GH4 is a great camera for sci-fi because it has these tones and these tendencies to lean in certain ways that makes you think that what you're looking at isn't necessarily real life. And when you're making a sci-fi, they know that you're not looking at something that's actually real. So that fake kind of image really lends itself to being able to make something like an action or a sci-fi, something like that. This camera, you can go hard drama, you could go sci-fi, you could go comedy, you could go any direction that you want to. And to me, that's worth $55,000, and it would be worth it even more if I knew that I had that money and was able to spend that money to begin with. Luckily though, we do have some rental options, so you can go to our website at cameraambassador.com and check out a week rental for $1,200. Week rental, $1,200, which is really good for a camera that costs $55. Now, this camera is not one that you want to get lazy with. Yes, you have a ton of dynamic range. Yes, you have places to be able to pull back on your highlights, and you can always crush the shadows, totally. You can get a little noisy on this camera too, but don't get lazy with it. This camera is very much so utilized the absolute best when you start creating with it in pre-production. What I mean by that is you need to know your look. You need to know what it is that you're going after for, the image that you want to have. So there's not a question of it when you get on set. Now, obviously, as you're shooting and as you light and as you have your scene created and you set your frame, not in that order, you're gonna go ahead and start building your real image. And that's gonna change a little bit from pre-production, but you're gonna have an idea of where you wanna go. Now, that creates the image, But this image doesn't really come to life until you hit post-production. When you hit post-production, you start seeing everything really come to fruition in a way that you weren't able to see with even any of your lookup tables. Because this image has so much information in it, you can pull so much more out of it than you can with just a standard LUT from a monitor. Now, there's nothing really scary or terrifying about using this camera aside from the price, but it's not a camera you want to use just because of production value. What I'm saying is, if you're gonna use this camera and you're gonna say you have a red mag in there that's 128 or even 250, you don't want to record on less than 6:1 for compression. What I noticed as I went ahead and did my testing was that you can shoot on less than 6:1. You can shoot on 22:1. You can shoot on 20:1. But the image starts to fade after about 10:1, and it's noticeable. Now, if you're shooting something where you want to be able to have an image that's absolutely big and beautiful, and you're worried about making sure you have the cleanest image possible, rather than shooting something that's very gritty or something like that, yes, you can probably get away with it on something more gritty. But if you want this clean image, it all starts with this compression. This compression is vital to being able to make sure that you have an image that's not going to get away from you in post-production. Because the place that I saw that the compression fell apart wasn't on the initial shooting. I barely saw a difference there. Where I saw the difference was after the heavy grades I started pressing onto these overly compressed images. Those heavy grades on those images, the images didn't have enough detail to be able to give you the information that you were looking for. It still looked good, but it didn't look as good as it could have looked. So definitely take your time with this camera and have a great system set up and in place for your data management, so there's not a question of whether, oh, do we have enough space left on the card, and well, do we have another one in transition? Have enough cards, have enough data to be able to utilize this camera to its full potential, because you will see a difference and you will pay for it in the long run. So those things to say this. If you want to utilize this camera on your shoot, I would suggest definitely making sure that you have a very decent budget for it. Not because the camera is so incredibly expensive. You can rent it out for pretty cheap. But the issue comes in to when you start having all of these add-ons. And when you have all of these add-ons, the budget can get away from you pretty quickly. So make sure that you do all your math before deciding to jump the gun on a great priced rental for a Red Epic Dragon. Now, shooting full frame on this image is an incredibly beautiful thing because you can always go ahead and cut off your tops and bottoms and get your 16:9 and all that stuff going, and that's fantastic. Always utilize that full sensor. It's there, and use the image that you have. You will always have all of that information. If you want to cut down on it later, go for it. But my absolute recommendation would be to always, always, always use the full frame resolution. You want to have as much as you can. One of the things that's great about this camera is that when you crop in on this sensor and you go down to 2K, you're only using that center 2K. You're not using the full frame of the sensor anymore. So what that means is you get this zoomed in image, and that might be incredibly beneficial to you. That might save you a lot of money in lenses and being able to do things that you wouldn't have normally been able to do. I'm not absolutely suggesting that. I'm saying if you're on a budget and you absolutely want to use this camera, that is something that you might be able to utilize in order to be able to have the image you're looking for. If you have the opportunity to make a film with this camera, go ahead and write back in and tell us, what did you think about your experience? We want to know how people have enjoyed using this camera. What have been the problems with it? Now, the big thing about this community discussion isn't that we're ripping apart one camera or talking trash about another. It's that we collectively get this idea together that says, hey, this is how we build a better camera. And that's how innovation works. People don't know who are innovating cameras if we don't speak up and say, hey, this was a problem. We had an issue with this. So what have your issues been with the Red camera? But the other thing people don't know, if you don't tell them, and this happens with artists all the time too, is what was incredible about it. What did you love about the camera? So write that in the comments below too. What did you love about this camera? I hope you've enjoyed my review of the Red Epic Dragon. This has been a blast of a camera to work with, and I'm kind of sad to see it go and start working on the next camera, but everything has to end up changing, and I'm sure I'll be excited as the next one as I am about this one, because after you get into a camera and you work with it for a while, you start to remember that, oh yeah, I'm just a storyteller, and this is just a tool for me. And it's an incredible tool, but it's still just a tool, and I'm the cinematographer, and so are you. So I hope you take some time today to go out, make a film, make a short, write a script, do something, make some edits on a film that you left in your hard drive and you haven't worked on in forever, but do something creative today, because that's a really biggest important thing that we care about here, is that we're giving you information so that you can go out and you can go create. Go do it. I'm Matt with Camera Ambassador. See ya.